Hello and welcome, and we're here at Holistic Investments, and I'm your host, Konstantin Kogun, and I'm delighted to have another amazing guest today, Aaron Payas, who's a partner and head of funds at Hassan's. Hi, Aaron.
Hey, Konstantin. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here, and really excited to talk to an expert in this field. You're a Web3 lawyer for like quite some time. So I know that you are also NFT collector. You have a degree in math and law. You know, you play professionally like soccer, which is like really my passion as well. So you have a lot to talk about, right? But by the way, because you respect law, and obviously I'm also the same. So we're going to throw a legal disclaimer so that we can talk about anything we want. So this content is for informational purposes only. You should not construe any such information or other material as legal, tax, investment, financial, or any other advice. So now we cannot cut it out. It's there, so we can start. Aaron, tell us like how did you start your journey? Like what is always curious for me, how people who are like smart, they're coming from traditional background, all of a sudden at some point in their life they decide that Web3 is something that they want to pursue.
Yeah, so I guess for me, it wasn't in hindsight, it wasn't that big of a surprise because my first degree, as you mentioned, was in mathematics. So already, although I then became a lawyer, I think my mind was wired a bit differently to most lawyers. So I've always considered myself more like of an engineer, mathematician style. Just the way that I approach problems and solutions, very logic based. So the fact that I did a bit of computer science, I did a bit of programming whilst at university, even though I then moved over to law, which actually I didn't move too far away from numbers because I became a funds lawyer. So I think apart from football and crypto, asset management is kind of something which I'm quite passionate about, very much from the Warren Buffett school of value invest. That was my career from, I would say, 2008 to 2016. So a funds lawyer, very much in the asset management world. But then 2016, 2017 began the rumblings about crypto, at least in my world. It started to get mentioned, and slowly but surely I got involved. And then 2017 was very important for us because in Gibraltar, because we took a decision to regulate. So with the ICO craze, so we had the decision to make as a jurisdiction, whether to just let it be, or ignore it, or stop it, or do something which hadn't really been done in any other jurisdiction, apart from New York, that they had the BIT license at the time. So that was the only bespoke regulations out there in any other jurisdiction. So we came up with our DLT framework in 2017. So as from the 1st of January 2018, we've been able to issue these licenses. But much more than that, what it's given us is, as a jurisdiction, the legal, regulatory, and even tax certainty on crypto. We know what it is. We know what we can, what we cannot do with it. We know where the boundaries are. We know what activities are unregulated, what activities are regulated, and what activities fall in between, such as token issuers, where there's only a registration regime. And at that point, that was when I moved very much into crypto. Although I still do a lot of funds work. A lot of my funds are now crypto funds, which is not surprising. But now, as head of funds at my firm, there's a lot of work also to be done in the fund space. But still, I would say 80 to 90% of my time is taken up with crypto.
Yeah, and you're the author of like really like amazing document, which is Gibraltar's noteworthy crypto offering cheat sheets, which is, in my opinion, one of the best like things that like lawyers, and not only lawyers, like people who want to simplify your life, like do like it's put it into one like very cohesive spreadsheet, which explains the pathway to legality, the pathway to be compliant and to respect not only the local jurisdiction, right, but also international. So if we can jump right into it, one of the things that you would notice that there is a DLT provider license and there is also VASP, right? So they're a little bit different. They apply to different rules. So if you can elaborate a little bit, what are the core differences between them?
Yeah, so the DLT license is the one that you would think of when an entity has a very important role to play in terms of the safekeeping of assets. So if you are taking control, or you are custodying assets, or you are very much an important piece in the transmission of crypto assets, which are not yours, which belong to someone else, then you would be caught by the DLT license. So that is the one that you see exchanges getting, and the one that you see custodians getting. It is becoming extremely popular now for perpetual futures exchanges, because our regime is super attractive in comparison to other jurisdictions, particularly because if you have crypto derivatives that are settled in crypto, then you don't look into the MiFID licenses. Yes, so the DLT license is the one which any crypto custodian or any crypto exchange would go for. And really the regulated activity, if we break it down, it's the storage or transmission of crypto assets that belong to someone else, so not your own. So the minute that you have a business activity that you are taking control or significant control of someone else's assets, crypto assets, then the DLT license is the one that would come into play. And this license is becoming extremely popular now for perpetual futures exchanges, because the Gibraltar regulator has taken the view that any crypto derivative which is settled in crypto will not need a license from traditional financial, from any traditional financial services license. You just fall within the DLT license. So that is something which is a bit of a unique selling point of Gibraltar, and is attracting a lot of attention at the moment. We had the announcement of Bullish a few months back that they have launched their perpetual futures exchange out of Gibraltar. So that was really good news for us. And then the VASP registration, this can be confusing because VASP is used in different ways in different jurisdictions. But all that this means is any activity such as an OTC desk where you're not taking custody, so where you're more or less an arranger or a broker. And also for token issuers, again, you're not taking custody of anyone's assets, you're just selling tokens. Those you are required to, under the FATF recommendations, you're required to register with the regulator. And that is a registration regime which is, you're not regulated, but you're registered for AML purposes. So the regulator will look at your AML processes, and you're required to have a local money laundering reporting officer based here in Gibraltar. And those are the two main requirements for you to register. And then apart from that, if you have any advisory companies or any R&D activity, that you can put into a simple company in Gibraltar, and that doesn't need to be either registered or regulated. So those are the three baskets of the different levels of regulation.
So let's try to match all those baskets to layman terms, because I know for people who are not that well versed with legal and compliance terms, it might be overwhelming. So simple example, right? In May, for example, we've seen like an announcement that, let's say, Coinbase, even they launch like an offshore crypto derivative exchange, right? And obviously they want to be regulated. So let's imagine you would advise directly Coinbase. Of course, It's not a legal advice, but you like put it yourself in their shoes, right? So how would you even pick? Because the challenging part from an entrepreneur perspective who's running a big exchange or a custodian, like there's so many different regimes, right? You can go to Hong Kong, you can go to BVI, you can go to like let's say Switzerland, right? So how would you even pick the proper like regulatory standard that will be not only local but international, and will be compliant with not one jurisdiction but with multiple.
Yeah. So on the basis that you want to be successful and you want to be a reputable exchange, then you're looking at a jurisdiction which is well regulated, it is reputable, and you're looking for that legal and regulatory certainty. And if with that you've got a place where it's competitive from a tax perspective, then that also helps. So Coinbase is a great example that you've given, because it could have easily come here to Gibraltar. And I think in hindsight, Gibraltar is probably that little bit a better option than Bermuda. I think there's still a bit of a hidden gem in the world of crypto. But there is really nothing which Bermuda offers which Gibraltar can't. And geographically, it also helps where we are. We're in the Central European time zone. We're not an island, so it's easily accessible from mainland Europe. We're in between Asia and the US, and we also have directly below us the whole continent of Africa, which is just ripe for innovation, and I'm sure it's going to take off in the very near future from a tech perspective. So, but those are the things that you're looking for, because what you want to build on very solid foundations. And part of that is a very strong, a very reputable framework of regulation. But you also want it to be flexible, because crypto is very fast moving, very fast evolving. So you don't want to become regulated in a way where then you cannot evolve as you should be able to. And generally just have a jurisdiction where you have professional people who are very, very well versed in crypto, and can actually offer something for your aspirations, for your ambitions in terms of your global outreach from your base wherever you're regulated.
Mm-hmm. So if I would ask you more like a very direct question, because we want to have it like lively discussion, right? So head to head, right? You again, pros and cons, right? Let's say top three, like the benefits, like your jurisdiction, Gibraltar, as opposed to Bermuda. Because again, in retrospect, we can talk about that, Gibraltar is better, but for some reason, Coinbase chose Bermuda, right? So in your opinion, if you would wear like this, the devil's advocate hat, right? Why do you think they still went there, and what do you think they could have done better if they would go to Gibraltar?
Well, so what I think, again, to put it into context, back in 2017, when we implemented our DLT framework, it wasn't the industry pushing for this, lobbying for this, trying to explain it to the regulator, explain it to the government. It was actually the government working together with the regulator, who actually worked together to put this framework in place. So we have our crypto legislation at the initiative of the two authorities that most matter, which is the government and the regulator. So what people like myself, although we were consulted at some point, but what people like myself found was that there was a point in time which came very quickly, where we developed a framework, we developed a piece of legislation, and it was basically given to us and said, okay, now here are the rules. We've done basically all the hard work. Now go out and get business. If you counter that with most other jurisdictions where there's a reason why there's still not many jurisdictions with bespoke crypto legislation, it's because the industry has been trying for years to explain crypto to governments, explain crypto to the regulators, and try to get them comfortable. So that is, in answer to your question, where I think Gibraltar has a unique advantage. but that's not to say. So I think Bermuda is a bad example here, because I think Bermuda is a very, very solid jurisdiction, and I think it appeals. Again, if I mentioned geography before, I think geographically it's nearer to the US, so it's always going to be more attractive perhaps to US-based entities, as is Cayman Islands, as is BVI.
Time zone also, right? It plays a lot.
Time zone and all of these things, and also probably familiarity. There's probably previous business that has been done. And I think that's where we're trying to get to. I think we're trying to market ourselves to a certain point where we can attract more big names, because we have a few based here already, and then have a bit of that herd mentality where people start flowing into Gibraltar because there's many other big players now based here. So that is.
And it's really interesting because, like, when I was preparing for the interview and I talked to a lot of people who, potentially like looking to open either hedge funds or they want to get the VASP license, they told me that, like, even though it's a very common knowledge, right, to go to BVI, Cayman, Bermuda, Seychelles, that's actually, if you look at the top crypto exchanges, most of them are registered over there for now, right?
Yep.
And we talked about it in a private conversation that, like, it probably does not make sense to have both licenses, let's say in Gibraltar and, like, let's say Bermuda, right? So it'll be counterproductive. So you have to pick and choose. But eventually, I think, like, as you mentioned, because, like, it's such a more like so clear, like every single instance, it's more clear where, like, your government, your law firms, like, all unitedly, like, they work together to build this clarity. I think that helps a lot. And also what I would mention, I think, is, like, again, from my perspective as a person who went through the Spain, also researching, it's also banking. If you don't mind, like, talking a little bit about how, like, again, maybe it's my perception, but I feel like Gibraltar, like, is a little bit more, like, easier jurisdiction to have a banking partner as opposed to offshore entities like BVI and Seychelles.
Yeah. So banking is an issue. As we well know, it's still an issue, and it will continue to be an issue for a while, for any crypto project. So,
and if I may, Aaron, can you explain why banks are refusing legit crypto companies their business? Why cannot they open an account? Can you explain it maybe to the people who haven't seen this problem?
So I can't explain what the reasons behind it are. What we hear is just risk appetite. So I guess there's a lot of the fear of the unknown, and also the bad rap that comes with crypto generally. So we always see articles and news items on money being laundered through crypto, terrorist organizations being funded through crypto, where we know that even if that is happening, there's much more happens to the traditional banks. But that's really not the point, right? You don't want it to happen, even if it's at a smaller scale. But what's clear is that that most of these blockchains, everything is there. It's on record. It's easily observable. So generally, it is not a good conduit to launder money. So that is the ongoing battle, the ongoing discussion with banks. And if you want to be a bit more skeptical, you could say, well, banks are just getting ready, whilst they're just slowing down the whole industry until they get ready, and then they'll take over. They'll try to control, which in a way we've seen now with the ETF approvals, where you've got now the big boys stepping into the crypto game, initially by Bitcoin, but we'll probably see it through Ethereum as well, and then it's whatever's next. But so these payment rails, these correspondent banks, which are the big banks, are the problems with opening bank accounts, because you might have local smaller banks that are crypto friendly, but if their correspondent banks are threatening to close their relationships, then the bank will just decline the opening of an account for crypto projects. The advantage that banks in a place like Gibraltar have is that coming back to my earlier point, if you have the regulator and the government being crypto friendly, then all of a sudden that's a great start for you as a bank. So if you are considering taking on crypto clients, at least you know the regulator isn't going to come knocking on your door saying, "What are you doing?" Right? They've already authorized crypto exchanges and crypto custodians. So you know that, again, it gives you that certainty to move into the space. Mm-hmm. So in Gibraltar, we've had one particular option. It's a bank called Turicom Private Bank, but also a bank called the Gibraltar International Bank, and they have since day one been willing to listen to crypto projects and still open bank accounts. So one of our unique selling points back in 2017, 2018 with ICOs was that we had Turicom Private Bank opening accounts for these people and for these projects. So that was such a great win. So people were coming here, just some projects were coming here just for the bank account, which was, again, incredible for us. And that still exists. We had a lot of token issuers, a lot of crypto funds that had opened accounts with Signature Bank and Silvergate, because those worked extremely well. They had said no to the local banks because they said, no, we like these guys better. But when the issues happened with those banks in the US, they all came flooding back, running back to these banks for that banking option. So it's kind of funny how you see everything moving in cycles, and how these crypto friendly banks do well, then they don't do so well, but they're always in the game.
And it brings us to the next point, which is in your cheat sheet, right? The e-money and the banking license combo, right? So some companies, they're becoming a little bit more like conglomerates, so they don't just have like one operational side. Let's say they're doing only market making, only custodian services, or only hedge fund services. They actually are becoming like a much bigger organization, having made, like, let's say if they made money in one crypto cycle and they now want to expand. So naturally, they're exploring opportunities to get license, to put their operations and risk management into place, and be legit in all the circumstances, right? And God forbid, if somebody will audit them, they will be prepared, So can you talk a little bit about the e-money and the banking license combo that you're offering as well? And what's the benefit, and who is it directed to?
Yeah. So however much of a purist you are in crypto, you always need to interact with the real world, and that means fiat currencies. So what we're seeing is as a lot of these successful crypto firms or DLT firms, where they have the ability to apply for an e-money license, which isn't the most difficult to get. And all of a sudden you have both sides of let's call it payments ecosystem covered. You've got the crypto payments covered, or crypto transactions, and fiat transactions completely covered by. So if you want to take it one step further, like Sapo Bank has done in Gibraltar, they have a DLT license, but have also gone for a full banking license. So now all of a sudden they find themselves with the full, they can provide the full services under a banking license, which covers payment services, but also the DLT license. So it allows them to combine both activities, and that there's a lot of synergies there with respect to the use of stable coins, for example, and many other synergies. And going back to why Gibraltar, following Brexit, remains the only jurisdiction where you can passport these licenses into the UK. So not the DLT license, because the UK doesn't have any equivalent license, but any payment services license, e-money license, banking license, or even insurance license, those licenses can be passported into the UK, which means that if you wanted access to the UK market, you can either set up and get a license in the UK, or you can set up in Gibraltar, and you'll have direct access into the UK, which is, as you can imagine, very, very potent.
So in other words, what you're saying, just to simplify it even more, so as long as you get a banking license in Gibraltar, you don't have to set up a new license in the UK. It's transferred, is accepted, right? It is recognized as a legit, and you, I'm sure you have some kind of cooperation with FCA, right? And the other regulators in the UK, right? And that's one of the most important things. People understand the UK is still one of the top jurisdictions, right, in the world, right? And, well respected. So by doing that, you open up, a lot of opportunities for yourself, right? But maybe can you, just to finish this part, to go a little bit step further, what are the other benefits of having a banking license? So you operate what type of, let's say you set up a neobank, that is clear, but what if you're just having it for other purposes? What other applications do you see from your clients? How are they using it?
Well, so I think the most interesting one for me is the ability for the banks to accept deposits and provide interest on those deposits, but on stable coins. So now you're not just providing bank accounts in GBP or USD or euros. Now you can do it on USDC, for example, and that opens up just a whole other world in terms of payments, in terms of custody, and in terms of services. So that is one thing in particular which we see is being looked at very, very closely by many of these players in the space. The ability to accept deposits in stable coin rather than just your traditional fiat currencies.
And when you're saying provide deposits, let's say as a client, I deposit $100,000 in USDC or USDT, right? And then as an entity, as a bank with a full license, right, you can provide me similar equivalent to, let's say, I don't know, 3%, year to date, right? And something like that, right?
Yeah. Or whatever it is, but now you're dealing with a bank rather than an unregulated crypto firm or a crypto firm which isn't properly regulated, and there's no proper oversight, like Celsius, for example, the issues that we had with Celsius. So that is what you're trying to move away from by having an entity which is regulated under your traditional tried and tested licenses, in this case the banking license, but with that twist where now you're accepting deposits in something which is new, something which is a little bit different in stable coins.
And I think this is very important and great, but I can always anticipate the skepticism of people who went through this saga with Celsius. And not only them, there are many firms who are taking a lot of deposits, unfortunately blew up. And most of the time we were talking about the risk management strategies, which were poorly done, so with this license, right? For example, as you know, in the US, you have FDIC insurance, which is at least protects you for $250,000, deposit that is guaranteed almost on a much different level, right? We're talking about central banking, we're talking about Federal Reserve. So can you elaborate a little bit, what additional guardrails it adds to protect, the retail customers?
Yep. So in a similar vein, the guaranteed insurance that you have here in Gibraltar is to the tune of 100,000 euros, I believe it is, per account. So that is the added safeguard that is in place. But I think more than that is without selling it short. A banking license is the hardest license that you can get in financial services. So there's a reason for that. There's a lot of controls, a lot of requirements, a lot of reporting, a lot of transparency on what you can and cannot do with the deposits of your retail clients. And I think that is where the safety is. The last result, of course, is that insurance, but you hope that you never get there.
No, of course, and thank you for proving this point, which is very important. And then other part of when I wanted to ask you, like for people who again who already have existing licenses, I think it's also an interesting question and topic. Like how can you combine them? Again, coming back to an example of Coinbase, let's imagine they have a license like they're like VASP like in Bermuda, but they don't have a banking license, and all of a sudden they decide that they want to get a banking license in Gibraltar. So do you see like there are some challenges in this strategy, or you think that this, everything is great and it's like it's compatible and they can work together?
Yeah, I think so. And in that case, I think there's an obvious advantage to Gibraltar, where maybe it's not so clear for the DLT license, but with the banking license being able to passport into the UK market, I think that's a major advantage and something which we're seeing a lot of interest in. So if I take you again back a few years, when Brexit was happening or was going to happen, you had a lot of insurance firms, a lot of other financial services firms that were based in the EU, so maybe in Malta, maybe in Cyprus, or elsewhere, but a big part or a significant part of their client base, of their market, was the UK market. So when Brexit happened, they lost access to that market. So in anticipation, what a lot of them were looking were either to get regulated, get set up a presence in the UK, or alternatively, what tends to be a bit easier, a bit cheaper, a bit quicker, is to set up the base in Gibraltar and then from Gibraltar passport into the UK. So I think there is where Gibraltar, compared to other smaller jurisdictions, other smaller financial centers, has that specific advantage, which I can say is I can openly say is the main priority for Gibraltar. So Gibraltar at the moment will not do anything to upset that arrangement because it's so important for our financial center.
Brilliant. Now coming to the also practical question, which again, a lot of my listeners and audience are other very entrepreneurs, so they want to go straight to the point, right? So there are typical questions that I'm sure you get a lot, like, okay, I'm sold, sounds amazing. Like, how long does it take to actually get the license, and approximately what are we talking about, ballpark, about the cost? I mean, it's case by case, I understand, but maybe you can give at least a range. If we would go, let's say, DLT license, this amount, this time frame, VASP license, banking license.
Yep. So these licenses that you've mentioned, the key requirement is to have a presence in Gibraltar. So you need a core team here, where at least 2 or 3 people are senior management, so decision makers. That is of crucial importance. And in terms of licensing fees, they vary from license to license. It also depends on the size. But you can see anything from 30 to 80 to get these licenses, depending on which one. All of this information can be found online anyway. And then in terms of setup, in terms of lawyer costs, it really depends on how strong the legal team, if any, is from the project. So if you get a big project, let's say like Coinbase, what you find is that most of the documentation is done. So Gibraltar lawyers will just review from a Gibraltar perspective, make sure everything is in order. But it tends to be less time on the clock, so it tends to be less work or less fees. Whereas you have other projects where a lot of more work needs to go into it. So it's very difficult for me even to give you a ballpark because it's specific. But yeah, what we find is that generally on costs, when we're more or less as competitive as these other jurisdictions, which are our competitors.
So, but also okay, so let's talk about the time frame roughly. Like, how long does it take? Let's imagine a firm that is, I would say, not like not so bad. Like they're organized, they're all the documents, let's say 70 to 80%. Let's imagine be on a positive side. They're ready. So
Yeah.
how long, in a good scenario, how long does it take from the beginning when they address to you? You go through the process, you obviously ask them, some documentation, you process them, analyze, and then from A to Z, roughly, what are we talking about? Like the time?
With a good project that is fairly responsive, we're looking at about 9 months to get the license. I would say that is a good estimate. It can of course be more than that, but generally it's because either response times aren't there or there's issues with the application or that type. But if an application is or a project is well organized, responsive, a good application is put in, I'm fairly comfortable that the regulator will take about 9 months to process it.
We're talking about VASP or DLT?
DLT, that's the DLT license.
DLT, 9 months. What about
Yeah,
VASP?
the VASP is it's only a registration regime. So that can take with the regulator, it can take between 2 to 4 weeks. But that's pretty straightforward. So it's really not something where the timing tends to be an issue.
Right. And what about the banking license?
The banking license will for sure take longer. I would say 18 to 24 months is probably what you should be looking at.
Wow. So roughly we're talking about 2 years. So, okay.
Yeah. As I say, it's a kind of the holy grail of financial services licenses. So it comes with a lot of effort. And sure. In a way, you want to keep these things as streamlined and as you want these processes to happen as quickly as possible. But what you don't want is also to sell yourself as a reputable jurisdiction, but then you're giving out licenses left, right, and center, right? You want to protect the jurisdiction, but you also want to protect current holders of these licenses. Yeah. So if it's a fairly big deal to get a license in Gibraltar, then you want to maintain that high level. And it's really what we're trying to do as a crypto jurisdiction. I think it's safe to say the same as we did with the online gaming when we started 30 years ago. We tried to look more for the quality rather than the quantity. So it would be very easy for us to just give away licenses or not have this requirement to have a core team in Gibraltar. It would probably be very good and bring a lot of business in the short term, but is it really a good idea in the medium to long term? I'm pretty convinced that it isn't. You put at risk things like the passporting ability into the UK, and you then find yourself with a lot of brass plate companies that aren't really adding anything to the jurisdiction, aren't adding anything to the local economy, but are bringing a lot of risk to the jurisdiction. So it's another reason why, from at least I'm a completely biased Gibraltarian, but it's another reason why I feel that Gibraltar's offering is so solid, because it's not built on flimsy foundations. It's there to allow people to build with confidence and to come here and really find themselves as a hub where they are supported not only by the industry but by government and the regulator, which is not something you get everywhere.
100%. No, that's integrity and reputation is sometimes more important than anything else, right? So the question is also, I think it's important to us to mention you did another cheat sheet, so I call it, like, how far do you want to take it, right? So which is very useful. I think it's and we'll obviously share it, like, and where you're talking about what type of companies can even be considered, and I'll just elaborate a little bit about it. So you're talking about like regular companies, which is like a holding company. Typically, it can be one holding company, and there's multiple sub-entities like that can be responsible for different purposes. One custodian, one fund, and etc. That depends on the creativity of the shareholders. Now, there's an IP company, advisory company, research and development, crypto foundations, NFT sales. So maybe if we can, just to put them into the right baskets, right? Because I think while people listen in and they're very excited about Gibraltar, as you know, as you explain the depth of it, it might be a bit confusing, like who needs to go where? And I will elaborate on the question. For example, I would put it into several buckets. There's companies that are, let's say, just crypto companies. It's a project. Doesn't matter. They're opening like a project with betting, or they're opening crypto game, anything, right? They're issuing a token or an NFT, right? Which is itself a digital asset, right? So, and there's a lot of companies like that. We talked about like custodians, exchanges, crypto payment processors, and perpetual futures, which you would recommend VASP, right? That's like very clear. Now, if we fall back and understand that there's like thousands of companies that are, not centralized, and some of them can be like somewhere in the gray area between decentralized and centralized, what would we advise them to actually conduct legal and compliant issuance of the token or an NFT?
So the good news is that although it's all very confusing, and I for sure appreciate that. The good thing is that we've been at this for now 6-7 years. So we've seen all types of projects, all types of issues, and crypto is an industry where you can read about it, you can learn about it, you can watch videos, but until you, especially as a lawyer, I would say, or as any consultant or advisor, unless you deal with real people, with real projects and real problems, you don't really understand what the issues are. You can't really drill down into or take deep dives into certain topics to really then be able to advise properly your clients. So decentralization, you've mentioned decentralization, that's something which we've done so much work on. And we've ended up with a product in Gibraltar, the Crypto Foundation, which is extremely robust, extremely thorough, and really helps these DAOs to coordinate with their communities, to do things in the real world, to have a vehicle which is completely aligned with the objectives of a DAO. And that's just one example. And that you will see there on the list. The point is that whatever project you bring us, we will be able to advise you and give you clarity pretty quickly on where the regulation is going to hit you or not hit you. Going back to your point on decentralization, it's about really looking at, okay, you're saying that you're decentralized, but how does this actually work? Mm-hmm. How decentralized do you actually think you are? Where are the key players based? Where is the community based? And there are a lot of questions where a lot of issues where people are just trying to ignore, and I think it's very dangerous. There are a lot of jurisdictions which are advocating the DAO wrappers, for example, which have their advantage, but what you cannot do is have a complete contradiction. I don't think you can have something decentralized which is incorporated. That I think that is only a recipe for problems. And to give you one simple example, you can have let's call it a DAO, which everyone thinks is completely decentralized. You've got 1 million tokens held by 1 million people, and it's an investment DAO. But what if the 1 million token holders are all in the UK? Are you going to be able to say to the FCA and say to HMRC, to the tax authorities in the UK, we don't need to be regulated because we're decentralized? We're not in any one place, or we don't need to pay tax in the UK? Because they're going to say, yes, you might be completely decentralized, but you're all here in the UK. I'm going to tax you and I'm going to regulate you as if you were any other UK entity. So again, what is decentralization? Like Vitalik has a whole paper on the meaning of decentralization. And I think that is a great, anyone who's claiming to be decentralized needs to read that particular paper. But there's also the issue of being decentralized, but across borders as well, like no one in any one place. And these aren't concepts which are new. These are concepts which have been, again, tried and tested from a tax perspective. If you have a company, you have people in different places, different directors in different places. Where is the mind and management? Where is the activity happening? Where should it be taxed? It's kind of the same thinking with respect to decentralization and decentralized organizations. So again, I think I've given you a very long answer to your question, but the point is that we will be able to very quickly say, okay, this is what you're looking at, this is how we can help. And the good thing is that we will be able to tell you as well, this is where Gibraltar cannot help. And maybe we then assist you going to another jurisdiction where there's a different regulatory framework. And we're happy to do that as well, even if it means maybe not having a Gibraltar entity, but for sure we're not going to try and fit square pegs into round holes.
Yes, that makes sense. So I think there is another interesting example that we talked about briefly before, like, that's which pertains to security token offering, right? So which you, like, I would say, like, conducted, like, it's a very unique security token exchange, regulatory regime, like, which is, INX. I think we can talk about it very openly. To me, this is a very unique because it also, like, this is a US entity, right? So we're talking about like they have to deal with SEC, CFTC, IRS, all the other, like, regulators inside the United States. But for the reason you will explain soon, right? They decided to also partner with Gibraltar. So first of all, if you can explain a little bit, how did you come up with this structure and what is unique about it? Like, how did you conduct it?
Yeah, so I'll try to explain without getting too legalistic. But I think in summary, so the INX story is a great one, because we're going back to 2018, where you had the ICO craze. People or projects were raising crazy amount of money in minutes through the ICOs. But INX had the foresight to say, okay, there's going to be regulation coming to this space, and we want to go down the properly regulated route. Now they wanted to sell their INX token in the US, and it was pretty clear that because of the characteristics of the INX token, that it was going to be a security. So they did what was unthinkable at the time, which is go to the SEC and tell them, we want to register our token offering with the SEC, but we don't want to fall within any of the exemptions. No Reg D, no Reg S, no Reg A, none of that. We want to offer it to everyone, so a public offering. And that, of course, is like another level of difficulty altogether. So after more than 2 years of back and forth with the SEC, I think it was 13 or 14 rounds of feedback. I don't even want to think of how much they spent in legal fees with the US advisors, not so much with us as the Gibraltar advisors. They actually became and are still the only project to have their security token registered and approved by the SEC. So as you can imagine, it's an incredible story. But what's wonderful for Gibraltar is that the token issuer isn't even a US entity. It's not based in Delaware like you would normally find. The token issuer is actually a Gibraltar company, which meant that you had the SEC doing a forensic analysis on Gibraltar's laws, on the constituting documents of the Gibraltar company, on the agreements with the token holders, everything. So we passed that with flying colors, and that gave us now the foundation where we could replicate that whenever we wanted to. And the way, again, now I'm going to get legalistic, the way that it works is the token does not represent equity in the company and doesn't represent debt. It's what we call a bundle of contractual rights. So it gives you some, it gives you rights to a percentage of some of the profit of the company.
Like a revenue share.
like a sort of revenue share, correct? So that was the amazing story of INX for us. It made the news, and they're still doing super well. They're now listed in Canada, and they have they're licensed in the US. They have a security token exchange in the US, and every once in a while you hear of a new, fairly new big projects that are doing capital raises through that exchange. So yes, so again, just goes back to show the track record that we have, not only in how many years we've been doing this, but also the magnitude of some of the projects that we've undertaken.
Yeah, and I think it's a really interesting example because I didn't know that the issuance of the token, IONX token, was outside of the United States. So I think that's for sure a unique precedent. The question is do you see some more unique structuring of this caliber, right? So maybe I'm sure you work not only with the US, you work with other jurisdictions. So can you maybe provide another example which you think then is very interesting for us to hear?
Yes, so so we have done other projects, not of the same magnitude of INX, and what we're looking at now is for other clients is we're tokenizing things from robots that are, for example, one particular project that we're working on is these automated robots that clean up marinas and ports and lakes, and you can tokenize each unit, and that has incredible implications for sustainability and even possible angle with carbon credits and all of these things.
So you tokenize a robot?
So you can tokenize whatever, really.
Yeah, but yes, what I'm trying to understand, what's the token? What's the utility of the token?
So it would be in this sense, it would be a security token, where you own a piece. You can have one token per unit, or you can have 1,000 tokens per unit, and you own a piece of this robot. These robots are sold to marinas or rented out to marinas, so there's a profit that comes back, and that profit can then be directly through stablecoin distributed directly to your wallet, where you have the security token. You can use your wallet to connect onto their web portal, and once you connect, you'll be shown what tokens you have. So, for example, if you have a few favorite marinas, mine are Gibraltar, Ibiza, and I don't know, and Monaco, then I'll buy tokens of units in those robots that are placed there, and then I can connect. I can see the tokens that I hold for how long I've been holding them, plus all of the other incredible detail which these robots are transmitting back to the company in terms of water quality, how much rubbish they've collected, how much oil, all of these things. Just ideas like that is they're exceptional ideas and exceptional use cases for tokenization. What we're finding a bit harder is, and I think it's a reason why we haven't seen more of them, is tokenization of property. The transferability of property causes a lot of issues, stamp duty, tax, that type of thing, at least in my part of the world.
Yeah.
They're big issues, but it's there for the taking. It's absolutely there for the taking. I think tokenization of assets, we can already see that it's a trend for 2024. It's absolutely there, and we had through INX, we've had the experience, and we have the know-how.
Yeah, I think it will require one of the challenging part for me when I was looking into a lot of offerings as a secondary market. Obviously, it's not the same liquidity as for traditional exchanges, so to speak. So it will take time to build up this momentum and the liquidity. And I think once that will be much bigger, so we're going to see more and more examples, because people will see the benefits of, let's say, exiting like particular positions in businesses, and that's a particular benefit of tokenization as well, right? Earlier liquidity, right? For a lot of people who are reviewing it as a property, right? I've participated in 2018 also, like in long research of how to tokenize real estate, and after deep dive, we understood it doesn't make sense. The money we will spend on this does not provide enough benefits to go for it, right? So especially for legal fees, and people forget, again, not to dissuade anyone, right? But that one thing you tokenize, another thing is also you have to maintain this, right? There's also constant legal fees just to maintain this regulatory framework and to be compliant. So yeah, that comes with a price, so to speak. You touch another interesting topic, which is taxes, right? I just want really briefly, not to forget about this part we're talking about. So in the taxation, in your cheat sheet, you explained that it's 12.5% only, and profits originating in the form of Gibraltar, from the Gibraltar entity. Can you elaborate a lot about it? For example, if you compare it to some of the offshore entities, and zones like BVI, they have 0, right? So that's right off the bat, that's how I think they win in certain frameworks. But if you compare it to UK, right, they have higher taxation, right? So at the same time, licensing in Gibraltar, passport you to the UK. So maybe you can explain the tax benefits as well a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think saying that jurisdictions like BVI tax is 0%, I think it's normally not the case when you look under the hood. In Gibraltar, anyway, we're not trying to be that type of jurisdiction. We're trying to, as I say, be compliant internationally. We want to remain competitive, but we'll be internationally compliant. So we actually moved our corporate tax rate from 10% to 12.5%, because that's where that's the direction of travel with respect to international tax. But that is on profits of the Gibraltar-based companies and for licensed companies. For what we do
no
have
capital gains, right? So that's important, right?
So no capital gains, no VAT. There's no wealth tax for individuals, no inheritance tax. There's no withholding tax either for corporates. So all of that is very important. What is very important as well is that we have a system which is similar to Hong Kong, which is a territorial basis of taxation. And what that means is that you're only taxed on any profits that are derived from Gibraltar. So if you have a Gibraltar company and you have a property in Gibraltar and one in France, the rent from the Gibraltar property is taxed. The rent from the French company isn't. So that's why, going back to the infographics, holding companies are very popular here in Gibraltar.
And just to make sure, sorry to interrupt you, but that would mean that if the French property that it should be taxed according to the French taxation, and they have to provide you a proof, right? That it was done.
Yes. So at the French level, there'll be taxes paid. There's no getting around that. But at least when then that comes up to the parent, to the Gibraltar company, there's not another tax. So
no double taxation, basically.
Correct.
On an individual level, I think it's also important to mention that you have a certain cap, which is a very interesting. So you have a maximum rate of 25%, right?
Yes.
Can you explain it?
For regular individuals, the maximum tax rate is 25%. So you never pay more than 25%. But there are two actually specific tax regimes for individuals and for entrepreneurs, which are very attractive because they cap your tax. They cap how much tax you pay on an annual basis. So I think the cap is somewhere at like £40,000, but you can be earning 5 million and you only pay 40,000. And the reason that was introduced was back because we can have the perfect business environment for projects to come over, but we don't want just the projects. We want to attract the talent as well. So these tax regimes are for these highly skilled individuals where we don't have enough of in Gibraltar. So we bring them over and we give them tax, just more beneficial tax deals to have them on the basis that by having them here, the whole economy will benefit. That's the thinking. So it's not just about giving these people a good break. It's about just helping the whole jurisdiction. So again, those are very important quirks of the jurisdiction, and it's something that we've also worked a lot on in the crypto space. A lot of crypto entrepreneurs we've helped them move over to Gibraltar because fairly decent part of the world, plus crypto friendly, good weather, good education systems, very safe, so ideal to raise a young family, for example. It just works very well from that perspective.
Now, if I may, like I think like you mentioned it a little bit, so I want to just elaborate. So the not many people know who are not directly involved into the betting like world, right? But Gibraltar is one of the top jurisdictions in the betting world. Actually, I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like it became popular as a jurisdiction, I think, due to the betting, like like in the beginning, right? So can you elaborate on this part and like explain, maybe do you see some interesting combinations where the betting world now emerging into crypto, and there is like this synergy where they combine your favorable regime on both sides?
Yeah, for sure. So the crypto gaming the crypto gaming industry, if we can call it that, is really growing now. So what you have is most of these are unregulated, either not incorporated anywhere or incorporated in unregulated jurisdictions. So it's something which for sure we will look at, I think, very soon. It makes sense because we have a very strong online gaming industry and framework, and we have the same in DLT and crypto. So it just makes sense to now find a way to combine both. We need to make sure, because by creating something new, you don't want to destroy what you already have. It's something which clearly is a big concern, but it just makes sense because you can see how crypto is creeping into gaming. You can see how gaming companies are already thinking about crypto, even if it's just processing of payments. So it just makes sense to look at that. This week is actually a very exciting week in the gaming industry, because you've got the ICE conference in London. So we have our colleagues from the gaming department over there in London at the moment. So it is something which is very much on the cards, I would say.
And then in your experience, again, like traditional questions, like how long does it take to get the online license, like, and roughly what are we talking about in terms of the cost?
I think you're looking at in terms of the cost for the gaming license, I don't know off the top of my head, but in terms of timeframes, you're looking at more or less the same time, I would say.
9 months?
9 months, maybe 6 to 9 months.
Got it.
Yeah. But again, in the same vein, or in the same way that we've done with crypto, we're very much selective with who we give gaming licenses to. So, for example, I think the last time I looked, we've given out something like 35 licenses in 30 years. Malta may have given out, I don't know, 300 to 400 licenses. So it's just a different type of approach, where we've been very selective on attracting or licensing only the bigger players, which is why Gibraltar got on the map, because it was whenever you looked at one of these massive gaming companies where they were based and licensed, it tended to be Gibraltar, which is what really helped us helped propel us into a very much a premier crypto hub, gaming hub.
Perfect. Yeah, I think anyone who wants to go deeper into it, they would just need to contact you like directly. I think that would be the best case. Obviously, you have a lot of colleagues. Sasan is a big firm, so like, and I'm sure like there's every niche has its own partner, right? You're responsible for the funds. Like I know that this is something that how we found the common grounds, and anyone who's trying to set up a hedge fund or trying to explore like the holding company with the hedging structure, obviously, I'm sure like Aaron is like the best go-to person, right? And I want to also ask you more like so we're going to the end of the interview, like more personal, like two more personal questions, right? So you're a proud owner of Bored Ape NFT, right? It's 3,338, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Right. Yeah.
What made you, I mean, you're working with mostly regulated entities, like in a more traditional world, like, at the same time, you felt a need, like, to become a member of, such a interesting NFT novelty, I would say, right? So what made you buy it?
So I was following Bored Ape Yacht Club since the very beginning. Now it was funny because at the time I didn't have the funds to purchase one, so they were selling for, I think, 3 ETH, and I was trying to save up for 3 ETH, and then when I had 3 ETH, they were selling for 6, and then 9, and then I just could never get there. But after a while, when they had actually peaked in value, but then came down significantly. At that point, I found myself able to purchase one, and it was something which I had actually been recommending to a lot of people since day one, because the value of NFTs, and of course you're going to have the popular or the successful collections and the unsuccessful ones, as with everything. But the penny dropped when I saw a Bored Ape slapped onto a bottle of wine. So it was called the Bored Wine Company, and I just thought that it looked amazing. I saw how well the wine was selling. I just knew that the branding of these things could be very, very significant, and I think we've seen that with the merchandise that they have released. I still think that Bored Ape Yacht Club should have never stopped selling that merchandise. I think it would still fly off the shops, but it just made me want to not only be part of that community, because I think that only by owning your own NFTs will you really experience and learn about the industry, which again then allows you to properly advise people or speak the same language with clients. I think it's also important for someone like me, who I'm claiming to be a Web3 lawyer, to be able to say, listen, I've got skin in the game as well. It's not just your regular lawyer with a suit and a tie, who's trying to make money off of this new industry. It's like I'm here to help people or projects build as well, and that's how I see myself and how my team here at Hassan's think. It's about we're not really even seeing this as a business. It's more like we see the whole value of the whole space, what it's doing, what it's creating, and we just want to, although we're not building in the way of like developers are doing or founders are doing, the amount of advice that we give and guidance and how we facilitate the incorporation of companies or getting licenses, I think that in that way we are builders as well. And we like to, when we talk about what we do as a team, we always say about we're trying to help Web3 clients to build in this space, and that is, so we almost see ourselves as builders as well. Maybe it just sounds good for us, but that was a large part of why I went ahead with buying the Bored Ape. I think I could have bought many other expensive things for much cheaper, so it was a significant amount, at least for me. But it was something which I felt was just a proper sign of I'm in the game for the right reasons.
Okay, I'm not going to ask you exactly what is the price right now, but like if you're going to talk about, but like let me ask you, is it less or more for what you purchased it for?
So I don't know because my Bored Ape is not what you call a floor ape. It has very rare traits. So whatever I think the floor, the last time I checked a week ago, was at about $62,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know what the value would be
57
for
at the moment when we recorded, it's like 24 and a half like ETH, right? So yeah, roughly between like, depending on like on the price of ETH, like around 57 to $60,000. Yes.
Yeah, which would be if I didn't have one, would be an amazing entry point, I think, just because of how much it seems that Yuga Labs have planned. But yeah, what happens now is that you get attached to your NFT. It becomes part of you, and I get the bust which you have back here, and I got the little Lego of my Bored Ape, and it starts being a part of you. So it's going to be difficult to sell it if I ever sell it at some point.
So basically, it's less of an investment. It's more of a skin in the game and representation and being and your identity, like being part of the bigger picture in the community, showcasing like, that, okay, I'm not just like talking about it. I'm just like being an advisor, a lawyer, like I'm also participating actively with my own money. And here's the proof, right? You don't need to talk about it. You own it. So ownership is one of the best representation, right? So that's, if I understand you correctly.
For sure, it wasn't an investment. Like I've made many bad investments, but this wasn't. This would have been another bad investment if I would have bought it for that reason. But it absolutely wasn't. It was either the Bored Ape or a CryptoPunk. I had the Bored Ape appealed to me much more than the CryptoPunk. So
The CryptoPunk, last time I checked, they're not even for sale. Like,
no, they had their own application. So you have to go to their own web portal to actually buy and sell CryptoPunk. And I think that they've held the value much more than the Bored Ape or any others. It's a very special community as well, the CryptoPunks. So it would be lovely to be part of that at some point, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. But yes, there's and we can probably show it on this clip. I can probably send you a photo where I actually bought a mask of the Bored Ape. So we went to an NFT conference where I spoke at, and we took photos with a mask with guys from Yuga Labs, and it's just cool. It's just cool. Yeah.
Listen, it is a community. It has its own value. It has its own rules. So I think the fact that you feel connected and deeply passionate about it, that's already like, that already like brings positivity to the people, because there's a lot of criticism as people who are like coming outside and they're like, oh my God, crazy folks buying like $60,000 worth of like real money, like hardcore made money, like for digital picture of an ape, right? Which it's mind-boggling when you first time even start talking about it, but then when you see a rational person like yourself, educated, like smart, like you are like you're very coming from a traditional background, so to speak, right? It's not like you're just like an enthusiast, like, and this is all you do in your life, but this is like a very, very inspiring and very good example. That's why I wanted to elaborate, like what was your motivation? To conclude, Aaron, I asked this question as a last question, like, and I never like notify. So this is probably one of the most important questions I will ask you today. Like, what is the meaning of life to you?
Growth and development, and what's development? But growth is, I think, anything which is alive is growing generally for most of its life, and that's how I live mine. Try to be a little bit better in every aspect from day to day, whether that's professionally, whether that's as a family man, as a work colleague, as a son, as a father, physically, mentally. Just try to be that little bit better day by day, and I think with consistency that most things can be achieved in life. So I'm not sure if that's a proper response to your question. What is life? But that's how I view it in terms of growth. Like if something isn't, like if you're not growing generally, and for sure this is true in the crypto space, if you're not growing, then you're going backwards, because life doesn't stay still. So you'd better be developing, whether that's professional development, self-development in any other form, or you're just going to lag behind the others, or the rest of the world. So yes, I wasn't expecting that question, but I've always known the answer to it.
Well, that's good. That's the beauty of it, right? Because it comes very genuinely. I agree with it. Growth is super important. It's like if you think about it, even in nature, right? The still water becomes like, not great to drink, and it's like loses its like nutrition capacity. Like whereas like when there's a current with a river, like any stream, like it's always like self somehow healing, and maintaining the quiet properties, because this is everything is about movement in life, right? And the growth and evolution is part of it, right? We have to become a better version of ourselves. Otherwise, like if we stay on the same place, we're gonna get probably hits more like and reminders that we need to grow and we need to move. So I really appreciate your answer. Appreciate your wisdom, your expertise, Aaron. And like, where can people contact you? Where do you spend most of your time? Is it LinkedIn, Twitter?
Yes. So I don't have social media in the sense of Facebook or Instagram. So LinkedIn and Twitter. It's my name, Aaron Pius. You'll find me, and yes, I think those two are probably the easiest way to get to me directly. And if not, I'm sure you'll share my email address. And I'm always available to speak.
And there's a cherry on top. Like, what is this T-shirt? Can you remind our, like, because you told me personally, I want to know what is this T-shirt on a background.
Yeah, so I used to play international football with Gibraltar. So 12 caps in total, played against some of the biggest teams in the world, and that included Germany when they were world champions, includes Portugal when they were European champions, and then also the likes of Belgium, Scotland, Ireland, Poland. So a few good matches there in the mix. And I was doing that at the same time as I was working as a lawyer here. That's just the beauty of Gibraltar. You can work up until 7:30 p.m. and be in training by 8. So
wow,
it's one of the benefits.
That's beautiful. I to be honest, I don't know a lot of great examples like this when people combine like their professional sport life, because you have to be in a good level. I used to play football. I know how hard it is to maintain a good shape, like, and at the same time, like you have a degree in math, like in law, and like you're successful like in what you're doing. So great example.
I think with organization and hard work, you get to fulfill your dreams. And it's not easy to work hard consistently, but then it's not as difficult to achieve most of your dreams. I think it's kind of the lesson that I've learned over the years. So you asked me what the jerseys were. This one is mine, the red one. My debut against Poland, and the white one is a Germany shirt. It's Mario Götze's shirt. And the reason I swapped shirts with him was because he's got the match-winning goal in the 2014 World Cup against Argentina in the final. So that's kind of my memento from my footballing past.
And they're both 19, right? So
and by pure coincidence, they're both 19, because my number was always number 8, but I had just come back from injury, so I had lost my number for that match. So it should have been an 8, but it was a 19, and it's just pure coincidence, or if you believe in coincidence.
I don't believe in coincidences, but But it's beautiful. Thank you for sharing your expertise. Thank you for sharing your private story, like, personal, like, achievements. I think you're a great example for the industry and just overall for the humanity, like, the way you live your life. So, I will obviously share like all your contact information. Anyone who wants to contact Aaron, like, please feel free. If you want to incorporate in Gibraltar, or if you just want to even like know more about the regulatory regime there and like explore, right? So yeah, please, I highly recommend, Aaron and his team. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Konstantin, thank you for having me. Pleasure to be on your show.